Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. On this episode, Vincent LaRussa joins me and we talk all about my first-hand account of being at the first Motley Crue concert with John 5 on guitar. This episode's a lot of fun. Of course, we're also going to talk about the Def Leppard set as well. I know you guys are going to really enjoy this, so let's jump in and let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. Today I'm excited to have back with me my buddy, my partner in crime, the chemist, Mr. Vincent LaRussa. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. How are you?
All righty.
Did you go tanning or something? You look all like you got some nice color. What happened?
No. What that is, and you know, I had a bunch of people asking me if you and I were going to do a show on the Motley Crue Def Leppard concert. And, you know, I know you have a very busy weekend. The color is not tan. The color is from me freaking running around doing things. And all of a sudden you're saying, I'm ready. Vincent's ready. I didn't want to disappoint the fans. So that's what you see in the face. It's the flushness.
You're flushed. You're flushed.
Flushed. Exactly.
All right.
But I do appreciate you taking some time for to do this. And, you know, I'll say this before we get into the details. You know, at the show that night, I had a few people stop me, and it's kind of funny. They stopped me. A couple of people asked to take pictures, and they're like, "Are you and the chemist going to be doing an episode?" Nobody said Vincent. I don't think that. Everybody was like, Are you and the chemist going to be doing this?"
That's great.
I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah. So
I guess I'll be forever known as the chemist.
I think so. So, you know, we've got to hope the government's not watching this because they might get a different impression of what we mean by when we say, the chemist.
True.
All of a sudden you get, we hear you're doing drugs and making drugs in your house. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? The chemist?
No, this is just musical related.
It's all, no, it's the chemistry of our friendship for 45 years. It is all music related. There are no illegal substances going on here.
No. Although I think you acquired that jukebox illegally, so the sources tell me.
I did not. That was 100% legal transaction.
Right. Just in the rumor mill.
No rumors.
Okay.
You're only saying that because I made you help me bring it in, and it weighs like 300 pounds, and it basically broke your back.
I'll never forget that, trying to roll how much that weighs with small wheels onto a lawn. That was a roast.
That was a roast.
That was a roast.
Oh, that was a total roast. But we got it. And then we had the lip over the door over here to get it in.
That was fun times. Yeah.
And for that, you got a pastrami sandwich, I think that's it.
I did. Yes. That was well worth it.
I think I got the better end of that deal.
Yeah, probably.
Well, I let you go in the pool for cooling also.
That's true. A heated pool.
A heated pool. Yes, that's right. A heated pool. But all righty. Enough of that nonsense that people don't care about at all. I wanted to get us together this weekend. Friday night was the first Motley Crue show with John 5. And it was, both Motley Crue and Def Leppard in Atlantic City. And I figured, I have a lot of people asking me about it. A lot of people, like I said, stopping me there. I said, let's get on. Let's talk about this. It is a little bit of a big deal. It was the first show without Mick Mars. Smooth. It was the first show without Mick Mars. But I know you weren't there. So I'll just paint the picture a little bit of what the place is like, because maybe a lot of people don't know, right? Maybe even you don't know. I'm not sure. Obviously, Def Leppard, Motley Crue were on a stadium tour for the last year, and they're going back out this year, overseas and international shows. Those shows were 50, 60,000 people at each one of them. And I went last year to whatever stadium is over here, whatever they call it.
Citi Field?
Is it City Field? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you went to City Field.
Yeah, it's still Shea Stadium to me, even though it's
Yeah.
not even the same building, but okay,
Right.
whatever. City Field. Yes, I went to City Field and there was 50, 60,000 people there. This place, Atlantic City, the Hard Rock Casino and Hotel, the arena holds. Nobody has any idea what you're doing there, but I do. You found the
hotel.
What was I going to say? It holds 5,000 people. So right off the top, to use our terminology, I'm thoroughly thawed about a place that holds only 5,000 people. I was originally going to be sitting in one of the last rows of the arena, which is still a great seat, obviously, when you're talking 5,000. And a day or two beforehand, I was able to upgrade my tickets for the same price.
Goddamn upgrade, man. You're always upgrade, man.
Well, it's one of these things. Ticketmaster puts tickets on sale, and the seats I had were originally like $400, I think, $350, $400. The ones that I ended up with each. Yes.
Okay.
So I wasn't going to pay that. The cheapest seats in the place started, because it is a smaller place, started at $250 a ticket.
Wow.
And that's what we had bought, the cheapest ones. Well, the night before the show, I go on Ticketmaster and I see there's 6 seats, and it was me and my wife and 2 other couples, 6 seats right near the stage, same face price. So I contact Ticketmaster and they exchanged the tickets for me. So I went from being the Bob Uecker last row to being right along the side of the stage, basically. So I was a little thrilled about that.
So I guess obviously it wasn't sold out.
So yeah, good question. I would say it was 99.5% sold. Certainly by the time, so when I went on Ticketmaster that night, there was probably 200-300 seats available for sale. There that night, I mean, the place looked sold out. There were scattered seats here or there, where seats 3 or 4, 2 or 3 that you could see that were empty. I'm guessing those are tickets that people were trying to resell and that they couldn't. I'll say it looked like basically a sellout. And at $250 and up a ticket, it's good for them, But yeah, I would say it was 99% at least. So,
but for a 5,000 seat venue to not be totally sold out for those 2 bands, that kind of says something, I would think.
Yeah, I don't know what to make it out when they're selling 50 or 60,000 tickets over here at City Field last summer, no problem. And I know that included Poison and Joan Jett, but with no disrespect to those 2 bands, they're not the ones selling 40, 50,000 tickets, So to go from selling 50 to 60,000 tickets at City Field to selling 5,000 in Atlantic City, John 5's first show, I thought the show would sell out instantly, but the ticket price is high. For my wife and I to go, you're talking $500 plus Ticketmaster fees, plus hotel fee, gas, food. It's an expensive weekend. And I'm sure some people would say not worth it, but we went 2 other couples and I had a very fun time.
Okay.
So when we got there, there was talk, on the whole tour, Def Leppard and Motley Crue keep flip-flopping back and forth between who was on first. So I had heard beforehand.
Abbott.
What?
Abbott.
Yes, Abbott. Yes, Abbott. There's all this talk about who's going to go on first. So actually, it was funny. The night before the show, Nikki Sixx did on Twitter, like he does a lot of times, like he calls it Ask Six. And I've never asked him any questions on it, but I just so happened to go on Twitter within 30 seconds to a minute of him saying, Ask Six, ask any questions you want. So I'm hearing all these stories that Motley Crue's playing first on Friday night, which would surprise me if they were. So I was like, I'm going to ask Nikki Sixx, who's playing first on Friday night? So yeah, hey, Nikki, looking forward to the show Friday night. Who's playing first? Wake up the next morning, he actually responded. I'm like, oh, wow. All right, that's kind of cool. We rotate. Thanks. Helpful.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I get to the arena that night, kind of not knowing and hearing that Motley Crue is going to play first, which again would have surprised me. So I'm like, nah, I'm not buying this. There's no way Motley Crue's playing first. So I said to my friends, I'm walking over to soundboard. I'm going to ask them who else is going to know besides soundboard guys. Of course, they're going to know. So I walk over and they say Def Leppard is playing first. All right, this makes a hell of a lot more sense to me. To me, I understand them flip-flopping, but this is, like I said to my friends, for Def Leppard, this is just another show in their long career. But Motley Crue, this show is a big deal. And that's the way. And I felt Motley Crue really should play last. I was happy that they did. So the ticket says the show starts at 8:00. It does not start at 8:00. No opening bands, right? So, but I expected it to start exactly at 8. And why do I think that? Because I saw Guns N' Roses in this exact same place a year and a half ago. The ticket said 9 o'clock, and Guns N' Roses was on the stage at 9 o'clock and 5 seconds. Again, it's a casino and all that, so I figured they're very rigid with their time. And so I was a little at 8 o'clock, they make an announcement like, hey, thank you everybody for coming. I'm like, all right, here we go. We're going to get started. And then it's just, we're sitting there for a half hour until Def Leppard comes on stage. So right away, I'm like, boo, 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 boo. And I turned to my friends, I said, who would have ever thought in 1990 or 1991 that Guns N' Roses would be the band that would be prompt and Def Leppard, Motley Crue would be the one that's running a half hour late. Now, maybe it's not really late. I don't know. But to me, it was, because the ticket's at 8 and it was 8:30 until Def Leppard started. So, but I will say this. I thoroughly enjoyed Def Leppard. Thoroughly. And for me, one of my last year on my Facebook page, I did a countdown of my favorite Def Leppard songs. And I think number 3 on my list was the song Promises, which is from the 90s. It's not one of their classics.
Was that a soundtrack? Was that a soundtrack song?
No, not that I'm aware of, unless they put it on a soundtrack also, but it's on one of their albums. And for whatever reason, the last 4, 5, 6 times I've seen them, they haven't done it. I know sometimes they do it, and they did it Friday night. And the second they did it, I got up. I was thrilled. That was the highlight of the evening probably for me. And my friend turns to me at the end of the song. He's like, what album is that song on? Is that, a deep cut from? I said, no, it's from the 90s. Like, oh, I wasn't listening to Def Leppard in the 90s. So I was thoroughly thrilled. And all things were forgiven for them starting at 8:30 at that point. So you're looking it up.
Yeah. They released it in 1999.
Right. I think something like Euphoria. Right.
Yeah. I don't think, I guess, maybe think I was a soundtrack song, but nope.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Two Steps Behind was on a soundtrack.
Maybe that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's like one of those Arnold Schwarzenegger movies it was on.
Yeah. One of those bad ones.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So so for me, that was a highlight because look, I like Def Leppard, but I don't need to hear live ever again. Animal, Rocket, Let's Get Rocked, and they did all of those. And I'm not surprised they did. Even, dare I say, and I know I'll get crucified for this, Switch 625, boo, don't need to hear that live again. I'd much rather hear them do some other stuff from the first 2 albums than those 4 songs. But I understand most of the fans like it. So, but I will say, thoroughly enjoyed Def Leppard. Always a top-notch performance by them. And kudos to the whole band. They still sound great. So it was a nice, fun way to start the evening. And they played for an hour and a half.
So even though one band was headlining, they were both going to play an even amount of time?
Yeah, they both played somewhere between 85 and 90 minutes, both bands.
Okay.
Yeah, so in fact, at that point, Def Leppard goes off. It's almost 10 o'clock. Some of my friends went to the restroom. Me and some of the guys just sitting there, and I said, it's 10 o'clock. I just saw Def Leppard for an hour and a half. I feel like I saw a whole concert already, The one thing that kind of irked me a little bit in the evening, I figured smaller place, stage, they would use like a generic type of stage setup, and both bands would use the same stage, and it would be a quick turnover. It's an hour between Def Leppard and Motley Crue.
That's a lot.
That's egregious. I'm too old. I'm too old for that. Motley Crue is now starting at 11 o'clock at night, and I'm having flashbacks to our days as kids being in L'Amour's.
Yeah, and you're thinking the show starts at 8, so now for the next band to go on at 11, that's a lot of time to go sit through. I'm going to say sit through another show like you're going to be tortured, but you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Right. No, Motley Crue is literally starting at 11 o'clock. And I'm like, wow, all right, we're not getting out of here until 12:30, which again is not horrible. But I'm old and cranky. So I was like, during that 1 hour break, I was getting a little bit like, come on, let's go.
Imagine how I would have been.
Oh, you would not have been happy.
Yeah.
You would have taken off your shoe. You would have been throwing it at the stagehands.
Pacing the aisles.
No. You would not have been happy. I was hanging out with friends, and also it was all good, in that regard. But I ran out, walked over to the bathroom for a little bit. That's when I met a few people that stopped me. Hey, Mike, can we take a picture? I was like, we watched the podcast. Oh, is Vin here with you? Is the chemist here with you? So I saw a few people there at that point. So it was fine, but I could have done with it. I think a 20-minute break in between bands, not an hour. That was a little bit, cranky old Mike was not happy with that.
Yeah.
But Def Leppard hit, not Def Leppard, Motley Crue hit the stage, and I'll say for me, all was forgiven. Always. Now,
let me just pause you here.
Go ahead, please, because I'm blabbering and I'm not giving you a chance to talk here.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. You're giving a nice little, snapshot of the evening. So I remember you saying a couple of years back, the last time you saw Motley Crue, they were boring, and you had no desire to see them again. So obviously, because they have a replacement guitar player now, first time, original lineup from day one, basically, right? I mean, since they've been...
Tommy Lee was replaced for a couple of tours, or at least one tour with another drummer, and obviously Vince Neil wasn't there for one album, so...
Right. I'm just talking from the onset of the band.
Yeah, 90% of the time it's been the four of them. Absolutely. And it's the first time Mick Mars is not playing with them.
Right. Okay, so you had that feeling. What other than the John 5 edition made it that much better for you, or that you enjoyed it that much more?
The fact that it's a small arena is... I think if this was a stadium again, I don't know that I would have been interested in going. Been there, done that last summer. I had a good time, and but I don't need to do it again. A small arena, as soon as it's a small arena like that, I instantly get interested, because it's just a whole different feel.
Yeah.
So and I was thinking to myself, man, 15, 20 years ago, probably both Motley Crue and Def Leppard to headline a place like this would have been good for them. So I started thinking that night about how the times have changed, and like 80s nostalgia has really taken off big time, because early 2000s, late 1990s, Def Leppard probably couldn't play to more than 5,000 people. That was a good night, and when Joe Elliott, when Def Leppard was performing, Joe Elliott was like, wow, this is one of the smallest crowds we played to in a long time. And I'm thinking, yeah, 20 years ago, this was a good crowd for you. And now it's nice to see that that's like the smallest crowd you're playing to.
Yeah.
But that was definitely a draw for me, the fact that it was, and it's a weekend away. So it's more than just a concert to me.
Right. And as far as set lists, because you mentioned the songs that Def Leppard played. So in regards to their set list, were there any surprises?
No. In fact, it was basically the exact same set list that they played last summer, with one very minor exception. And I kind of scratched my head on this, although I loved it. They do a medley in the middle of the show of cover tunes that they've recorded over the years. And I think it's nice. They're Smoking in the Boys Room, Helter Skelter, things like that. Anarchy in the UK, which, I'm always happy to hear that song. This time around, they did Blitzkrieg Bop from the Ramones, which first off was, I don't think, the best song for Vince Neil's voice. And we'll talk about his voice in a little bit. But it was unless I missed it, I don't recall Motley Crue ever actually officially recording and covering that. So it just seemed like a little odd, but hey, look, it's the Ramones. I love the Ramones, so I was happy with that. But that was the only difference in set list from last summer when I saw them to this show. Yeah,
I'm looking at the set list. So they did 15 songs.
Yep.
And interesting, they I mean, I was always a favorite when we played it when I was playing with Wildside, but they did Primal Scream as the second to last song. I'm kind of surprised. How does that song go over? I mean, I love the song, but how does it go over?
I am so glad, and we didn't plan this. I'm so glad you brought that up, because to me, well, I'm not a fan of the Dirt, right, that they performed. From the classic era, I've never been a big fan of that song. And
what, Primal Scream?
Yeah, Primal Scream. Okay. Yeah, and it definitely doesn't go over as well as like Girls, 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 A Live Wire, Looks to Kill. So the fact that they're playing it second to last surprises me. I wouldn't mind if they didn't play that song at all. I've never. It's a very average song to me. So it's very funny that you picked it. Now you're saying when you played in your Motley Crue tribute band, that song always went over well?
I'm not saying that.
Oh, okay.
I just enjoyed playing it. It was a fun song to play.
Really?
It was more of the, the element of playing the song and how it felt. I wouldn't say that song went over really well. There was another song we used to play. I'm trying to remember, and then we eventually took it out. I think it was from around that time.
Okay.
That it was just like Cricket Fest after we did it. We finally took it out. Yeah, it wasn't one of the from the the first or the second album. I'm trying to remember what it was, and I remember you're trying to remember the lead singer's name. God forgive me, I can't remember his name. Who played with in Wildside?
Oh,
but anyway,
Xavier.
No, that's the guitar player.
Oh, okay.
He's gonna kill me if he watches this.
But
It'll come to me.
okay.
This is the product of getting old. Your memory, just
Oh,
starts failing you.
totally. I did that a
But
few times Friday night where I was like, oh, Def Leppard sounded great. Vivian Campbell. And I'm like, who's the other guitarist? What's his name? My friends looked at me like, really, Mike? I'm like, yeah, the guy that doesn't wear a shirt. What's his name?
He played drums in Genesis, Phil Collins.
Yeah,
No,
my
Phil
friend was
Collin.
like, Phil Collin, Mike? I was like, oh, thank you. And I did it twice on Friday night. They looked at me like, it's good. I was like, old age sucks. What can I say?
Yeah. But yeah, no, I think it's a really odd choice for second to last song. And I'm just looking at everything else. They could have definitely had live. I would be moving Livewire up from where they had it, So, but that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I think fans would have, if you're going to go, I think fans would have probably preferred to hear like Louder Than Hell. Yeah. Something else from the first album.
That was a fun one to do.
Yeah.
Red Hot. I loved, what was it off of? I think it was off of, what was the other tune off of? I think it was off of Theater of Pain.
Theater of Pain.
What's the hell's on?
The only one that I know fans really like still, consensus wise, is Louder Than Hell.
Maybe it wasn't off. Maybe it was off of. Man, they're gonna take away. This is my Motley Crue ship.
Yeah. You were only in a Motley Crue tribute band for what, 2 years?
2.5.
2.5 years. All right.
Let me see if I'm actually bringing up one of their set lists to see.
Well, I'm thinking you're thinking of something on the first album. I don't know.
Oh,
Around Public Enemy #1.
I think Sex was the song that Pete was his name. Pete Brown. That's his name.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was a song he hated doing.
Really? Yeah, I'm not a fan of that song either.
Yeah. But yeah, there was another tune that I really loved playing. I'm now looking at it, they have a lot of other songs they could have played.
Oh, absolutely. One of my friends is like, how could they not do Too Young to Fall in Love?
Yeah. Oh yeah, So
but that's always going to be the case when you see a band that has, a lot of albums and lifetime catalog, number of hits like they do, video hits even. You're always going to leave saying, gee, how could they not do fill in the blank,
Right. Yeah.
I'll say this, go ahead, you first.
No, it's like we used to love one of Pete's favorite songs was Danger, which that was like kind of like a deep cut, but I thought that's a very underrated song that, and man, if they pulled that out, that would, I know it's a little bit slower, but I think it's a great tune.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have loved to hear something else from the first. They did Too Fast for Love and obviously Livewire. Too Fast for Love to me sounded amazing, just like it did in the stadium tour. That song was probably the highlight of the night for me both times. And I do wish they did something like maybe Starry Eyes or On With the Show, but I didn't go in there expecting.
That's the one.
Which
Starry Eyed.
Starry Eyes, yeah. That's one of my favorite Motley Crue songs.
That was I love playing that one.
Yeah. But I didn't go in there expecting to hear those. I figured it was going to be similar. I thought maybe they change one or two songs, if for no other reason. But, John 5, being a fan and whatever, would come in and that enthusiasm and be, the fans love this. But the only difference, like I said before, was Blitzkrieg Bop.
In contrast, I see Def Leppard ended with Pour Some Sugar in Me, Rock of Ages, and Photograph. That's pretty damn strong right there.
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
1, 2, 3 punch.
Absolutely. And I think before that, if I remember this right, they did Hysteria. Then before that, it was Bringing on the Heartbreak with Switch 6-9. They finished their show strong. There's no doubt. It's like David Lee Roth used to say, nothing but the hits.
Nothing but the hits. Yeah.
It's a strong end. And to me, even if you're just a casual Def Leppard fan, I don't see how, when you're playing those last 3, 4, 5 songs together, how you're not having a good time.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
In fact, I'll say this. The next day, I took a poll. We went to breakfast, me and, my other 5 friends and my wife that was with us. I said, so who did everybody like better, Def Leppard or Motley Crue? And Def Leppard was the winner by a vote of 4-2 between my friends.
Interesting.
And it wasn't all the women that said Def Leppard. It was kind of split, actually. It was 2 women. One guy said Def Leppard, and then 2 women, one guy, then 1 and 1 said Motley Crue also. So it was interesting.
But you still didn't answer my question. I asked you. Well, you said the last time you saw Motley Crue, or not the last time, before they did this reuniting for the summer tour they did last year. you said you kind of found them boring. They were cold ginish. So
Yes.
what is the difference now? Take out the John 5 thing, because I mean that automatically, you could talk about, them moving around stage. Vince Neil, I don't know how much better
Yeah.
shape he's in now. I think
Well,
I saw
and
a little bit
we'll
of
talk
video.
about all of that in a moment. But
Yeah.
I did answer your question. I said arena, small place. Come on, pay attention. No, for me, it was definitely the smaller place. I think that's what drew. But now when we talk about energy, and I have said in the past, Motley Crue was just a little bit boring to me in the last 10, 15 years. And boy, what I'm about to say, I mean, no disrespect at all.
The Streisand, Winwood, or Howie Mandel.
None of them. Oh man, there's a blast from the past. No, I mean, I got to figure out a way to say this, and because I mean it very. So I'll say this: Mick Mars clearly has been through a lot, physical wise, and I have nothing but the utmost respect that this guy's in his 60s and was still touring up until October last year. Yeah. It is. I hope when I'm 60 years old, maybe even younger, that I'm friggin' sitting on my couch eating potato chips, watching TV. All right, not touring the world. So the fact that somebody like Mick Mars could have the physical condition he has and still be out there playing all these years, I have nothing but the utmost respect for what he has done. Okay. Saying that, Motley Crue hits the stage. The first song is Wild Side, and John 5 is all over the stage. He's spinning in circles. He's running from side to side. And instantly I'm like, wow, what a difference in energy. And you could see like Nikki's feeding off of it. And you could just feel like a certain energy on the stage that I hate to say was lacking with Mick there. And I don't mean to, like I just said, I have nothing but the utmost respect for what Mick has done for decades, but it was definitely very obvious, the energy on the stage. Now, of course, it's the first show with John and all of that. I get that, but he was just the energy he brought to that stage really brought the show up a couple of steps, in my opinion. So
that kind of makes sense. I mean, obviously, he not having the physical, capability of doing that. It's not so much that he didn't want to put that energy into it, but not having the, the physical ability to do that, I'm sure even for himself was kind of rough, knowing like I like to be more animated and do this and that. You have all this pressure you're putting on a show, but if you can't do it,
Mick was physically unable to do it. But the difference, at least for me, it was like night and day. And Nikki Sixx is running across the stage to John. John's running across to Nikki. Vince is interacting with it. It really just brought a whole different energy to the show that to me was, and I never really realized that maybe some of the reason it was born and the energy was lacking was because of Mick's condition. Because I always just said, damn, it's incredible that guy's still up on the stage. But seeing that Friday night, it hit me instantly like, wow, there's a lot more energy in this band right now. So, that was to me something very obvious from song number one.
Right.
No,
well, that makes sense.
I'll say this, and you might not know off the top of your head, but one thing I did notice also is John 5's tone on him. I mean, he played the parts perfect, and no surprise, he's a great guitarist, but his tone, his sound was a little bit different to me than Mick's. And I did pick up on that. And, I'll say this, I've always thought Mick was a good guitarist. I've never put him in my top 5 or top 10, but John 5 is probably a better guitarist technically, maybe, but I did, from a sound and from a tone, I did notice that it wasn't Mick, and I didn't think I would, to be honest with you. I figured, all right, John will step in, he's a great guitarist, I won't be able to hear any difference, and he played the parts perfectly, but there was just something, that sound was just, and I'm sure it's just they play different guitars, right? And I don't know what
amplification,
yeah,
fingers, hands, everything. There's all encompassing.
Absolutely. And I'll say John 5 played all the parts perfect, but I was able to hear just the difference in the sound, which surprised. I didn't expect to feel that difference, but I did.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me though.
No, what it when I walked out, I was like, wow, that was a great show. John was great. And I even had a greater appreciation for Mick Mars when I walked out, because I was like, wow, I've always known, he's the only guitarist in Motley Crue, but it made me really even appreciate Mick Mars' sound and style and technique that much more. And that's not a criticism of what John was great. And I'd go see Motley Crue again next week with John, but it made me appreciate Mick even that much more. Just like, wow, the sound Mick brought to Motley Crue is really in some ways irreplaceable, even by somebody as good as great as John 5 is. So I thought that was an interesting thing. Funny thing, John almost took a spill on stage.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I wonder how many people noticed it. So like I said, he's running around. The drum's on a riser, and there's like 3 steps up to the drum. And at one point,
there's a diving board in the way.
There's a diving board in the way. Yes, tripped over. No, at one point he goes up the steps, and he's up there, with Tommy Lee, and they're rocking out. He turns around to come down the steps, and he almost falls to the point that he sits on his butt. And he goes down the steps one by one on his butt.
Wow.
I was like, oh man. And I wasn't videoing during the time. I was like, oh man, if I was videoing that and he took a spill, or if anybody else was videoing it, it was probably about 2/3 of the way through the show. I got to look and see if anybody captured it on video. It was very subtle. It's not like it wasn't like he was like feet up in the air, like, oh,
Right.
I was wondering if anybody else even noticed. And then one of my friends said to me after the show, did you notice John 5 almost fell? I'm like, oh, all right. I guess other people noticed that also. But
yeah.
But I mean, I don't even think he missed a note but it was just interesting seeing him go down those steps, like literally one by one on his butt. So that would have been an interesting story for your first show. But yeah, I guess we have to talk about this, and I hate to bring this topic up, the whole Vince Neil thing. So this is amazing to me. I posted 3-4 videos on my page. The comments about Vince, easily 95% negative.
Yeah.
Did you watch any of the videos?
I watched a little bit of, I think it was the opening, of Wild Side, right?
Wild Side,
Wild Side. Yeah. I think.
What are your thoughts? And be honest here. What were your thoughts
about Vince?
Yeah.
I mean, from just initial listen, I didn't hear anything egregious that I was like, wow, this sounds totally off or anything like that.
Right. Yeah.
I think he's going to obviously be, because of his size, so people are going to pick on him, and they remember the old Vince. But I didn't hear anything right now. I didn't watch obviously the whole show, but just my initial impressions of tone and voice. Yeah, it sounded like. Now that was the other thing I was going to ask, even for both bands, but we could wait for that as far as backing tracks and vocals. If you heard anything that was noticeable, but okay, so
yeah, to me, Vince was never a great singer. And I mean that in no disrespect to him. It's just like people debate about David Lee Roth not being a great singer, right? Vince was and is to me the perfect front man for Motley Crue. He had the look, he had the attitude, he had a certain swagger to him. He's, to me, a bona fide rock star, right? He's what you want out of a front man in a heavy metal rock band from the 80s. He was never a great singer, and it's, look, far from me to say anything because I can't sing to save my life, right? But nobody ever mistaken him for Robert Plant, right? I thought he sounded certainly passable, if not better than passable. It blows my mind that there is, like I said, 95%, it might be 99% of the comments are negative towards him. I just don't understand it. I know he's not as good as he was in the 80s. Who is? Yeah. Exactly. The guy is 62 years old. The fact that he's gained weight, I delete those comments. If people make comments about his weight, I delete those comments instantly, because that has nothing to do with music, as far as I'm concerned. And far be it from me to say somebody's gained weight. I've gained weight in the last 5 years, right? And I guarantee you probably 90% of the people who are making those comments have also gained weight. I thought, my friend said they thought the first couple of songs, Vince was a little rough, and then he settled in. I didn't hear that. I thought he was certainly, I mean, it still sounds like Vince Neil. It's not like, when we spoke about this, John Bon Jovi right now, he sings, it doesn't even sound like John Bon Jovi. To me, Vince sings, it sounds like Vince Neil still, albeit he might be talk singing some of the words, but again, he kind of did that some in the 90s and 2000. This is nothing new, so I don't get all the hatred towards him and towards Motley Crue in general. It's amazing the negative comments that I see all over my posts. It's I sometimes wonder where these 50, 60,000 people coming from that go to stadium tours shows, because the comments, I've never seen anything like this. And look, he's never a 10 out of 10 singer, but for my ears, and I know I'm going to get crucified for this, for my ears, it's passable. And I don't think that it's because my bar is so low. Maybe it is. I don't know. I really questioned myself yesterday when I'm reading all these comments. I'm like, wow, is my bar that low? I don't think so. I thought, there's plenty of singers from the 80s that sound much worse than Vince Neil.
Okay, so let's not, even though he's not, say Joe Elliott is a 10 performance singer that night. Where does Vince Neil then rank? Based on how good Joe Elliott was. Now I'm not saying he's a 10.
Right, no, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. It's tough because
totally different songs.
Bill and Vivian are just so incredible, and even Rick, with the background vocals are just friggin' incredible, that it's so tough to compare. I'd put Vince at a 5 or a 6, but even in their heyday, there was a big gap between the two of them to me. I don't think Vince could have ever sang songs like "Bringing On the Heartbreak." He didn't have that kind of range. But what Vince brought to the table was very different. In 1985, was there any lead singers I'd want in my band ahead of Vince Neil? Maybe a handful, not many. I'd probably have chosen in 1985 Vince Neil over Joe Elliott, just because what Vince brought to the table. But I would say, probably if we're saying Joe Elliott was a 10 and we're not, but we're just saying if that's where Joe would be, I'd have to say Vince is a 5 or a 6.
Okay. Yeah. Well, all right. Well, that's fair.
But still very passable to me. And, it's like I said, it sounds like Vince Neil still to me. So that's me.
So it's not like you enjoyed it any less because of how his vocals. You're still able to sing along to the songs. People were into it and stuff like that. Even at the show, did it seem like people were actually into the show, or this 99% negativity rate that you're seeing on YouTube, is that being translated when you're actually in the it's not arena, but in the venue?
5,000 people in the venue. 5,000 people seem to be having a great time.
So who got more applause, cheers, loud?
Good question. I would say it was even. I felt like the people who were there, I probably saw more Motley Crue shirts walking around than Def Leppard shirts, but I'd say both bands were equally received, and people standing up for both of them and singing and having a good time. It's not like Def Leppard went off and 500 or 1,000 people left, or it's not like Def Leppard was on and 500 people were still outside. The place was filled for both bands. Yeah, I saw no difference in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. What other, you had some other questions for me?
I'm just trying to think. How about the tempos of the songs? Did they play them any slow? Because a lot of times when the bands get older, they kind of slow down the tempos. I'm sure the keys were changed and stuff like that. That's a natural thing. Right. I did not notice the tempos, and I'll say specifically for Motley Crue, being slower. Once I got home and I watched a video, let's say Wild Side, and then I went back to a video in 1989 and watched that. I'm like, yep, it's definitely slower. But it's not like, all right, when Ace Frehley plays some of his songs right now, the tempos are, they're almost ballads. They're so slow. It's like Shock Me's become a ballad, or Rocket Ride. Exactly. Yeah. It wasn't like that at all to me. It was only noticeable when I did like an A/B comparison. To me, when I was there that night, there was not once I thought like, come on, guys, pick this up. Not once, Okay. But sitting at home, looking at it on your phone or whatever, and doing an A/B comparison, the tempos are a little bit slower. But to me, again, nothing that took away from an ounce of enjoyment, not one bit. What about as far as merchandise? Did they have the same type of merchandise that they would have at a typical arena show? Yeah, and I went back and forth, and I didn't buy anything, but they had a shirt specific for the 2 shows in Atlantic City, and they're doing one in Florida in March also. So the shirt was for all 3 shows. I think if it was for the show specific that I was at, I probably would have bought it. But once I saw it was for 3 different shows, I was like, it's $50. Yeah. Do I really need that? Am I going to really wear that shirt that often? So I ended up passing on it. But, it was cool. I almost bought, Def Leppard had a great lithograph that looked like Pyromania meets Hysteria album cover. It was like it had a Def Leppard feel to it, this thing. And it was autographed by the whole band for $150. I'm like, hey, that would look good in the room down here.
And I was like, $150. Do I need to spend 150? I thought that was a fair price, signed by the whole band. But I ultimately passed. I probably would have, if I go back in time, I'd buy the lithograph before I buy the shirt. The shirt was 50, the lithograph 150. In my opinion, 150 for the lithograph signed by all 5 guys. Fair price. Fair price. But I didn't do it. I didn't pull the trigger.
They're gonna.
No, that's all right. That's right. If it was 100, I would have bought it.
Yeah.
I would have bought it instantly. 150, right. I was like, I'm already spending a lot on these tickets, dinner, travel, hotel. Do I need to go another $150? If it was a local show, I probably would have done it.
Yeah.
You know, but my mind was just thinking about all the money I spent on other things. I was like, let me pass on that.
Right.
I'll say this: the Motley Crue show. Also, John Five's the microphones. Motley Crue hangs the microphones from the ceiling. Right, that's one of their things they do. And John Five's microphone had this big 5 on it, which I thought was kind of cool. As wasn't, it was like, Nikki Sixx's had like this thing that almost looks like a star, not a star. It reminds me of like in Superman. Remember the 78 movie with Christopher Reeve, and when Superman's like coming to Earth and he's in like some kind of like capsule or whatever. It looks a little bit like that to me. What's on his microphone stand, but the John 5 thing I thought was kind of cool with the 5 on it. The only thing I'll say, I wish Motley Crue during the show had made mention like, hey, Mick's not with us anymore. He gave us great 40 years, but tonight, we got John 5 first show. They announced John 5, and John 5 did a little solo for 2 or 3 minutes, actually playing with his teeth, which was weird, but good. I just wish they did some acknowledgments of like passing the baton, so to speak. Like, hey, Mick's no longer with us, but John is. And if there was Mick was shown on the screen a number of times, during the songs, but no mention of Mick that I can recall at all. So I wish they would have done. I wish they would have said something. Yeah. So I think that's the whole show in a nutshell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you had a really good time, and it was worth it. But you say it was worth the price you pay for admission?
Yeah, for me, it was a whole weekend away. So for me, hanging out with friends, going to dinner, hanging out a little bit afterwards, going to breakfast the next morning. To me, it's a fun weekend away with friends. And I got 3 hours of great music. I saw 2 full concerts as far as I'm concerned. I know they probably would play 15, 20 minutes longer if they were on their own, but I got full shows both nights,
Full shows and full dose.
Full shows and full dose, exactly. Yeah, right. In a small place, no regrets. That's no regrets. No. Yeah. No deposits, no returns. No regrets. Yeah. So yeah. You asked about tracks before, right? So I would love to see if anybody, because that was one of the things my friend Eddie and I spoke about a lot with Def Leppard. I don't want to say it's impossible if they're not piping in background vocals, but I am convinced they're not. I mean, I sit there and I study it. I'm looking, I'm like, I don't see any sign of it whatsoever. I know Vivian and Phil could sing incredible. In fact, I sent my friend after the show, I said, look at this video from when Def Leppard did a cruise 7-8 years ago when Joe Elliott was sick, and they did Hysteria, and Vivian and Phil sang lead on the song. They took separate verses, each of them. And my friend was like, damn, that's as good as Joe Elliott is. I'm like, yeah, they basically have 3 lead singers in the band,
Yeah.
We kept saying, how do they sound so perfect? But I think it's really a testament, especially to those 2 guys. And like I said before, I know Savage also does background vocals, but I think those 2 guys just are incredible vocalists, and it's amazing. And obviously they're not singing 2 hours a night for the last 40 years, so their voices are still in excellent shape. Kudos to those 2 guys, man. They really they freaking bring it, and great vocalists besides guitar players as well. So I would, if anybody has some kind of proof that Def Leppard uses anything, I'd love to see it, but I say it's live.
Well, I saw one YouTuber who was very much against this, and his latest video was kind of going after, and in his back of his, maybe he had a monitor, it had Paul Stanley, Blackie Lawless, and Vince Neil. So I would think, and he's pretty knowledgeable on this stuff, so I'm not saying definitely, but the fact that I saw Vince Neil on there makes me think that maybe some of it could be like, like the Wild Sides, like those
Right.
bang bangs and stuff like that. It could be just those things that are
Yep.
just, I think a lot of bands are doing like those background, gang vocal type of things, but the
Yes.
lead vocals are still, live.
I studied it and I even watched back my videos, my Motley Crue videos afterwards. I can't imagine any scenario that Vince Neil is not really singing. Right?
Yeah.
And it just, I mean, he's not always phrasing the songs the way they
Mhm.
originally were. I don't think he's lip singing at all. I
Mhm.
do agree. And I think Mick Mars even said a few years ago that they've owned up to the fact that they were piping in background vocals,
Mhm.
and it certainly at times seemed that way to me.
Mhm.
But in terms of lead vocal, I would be stunned if I
Yeah.
heard Vince wasn't really singing, because again, when I go to shows, I kind of pay attention to that now. I hate that I have to, but I do
Right.
pay attention to it. And I would be, like I said, I'd be stunned if Vince was not singing live.
Yeah.
It would be, if he pulls that off with the different phrasing, the way he sings the songs, and he pulls it off seamlessly like that, then kudos to him. But
Right.
it's not. He's singing live, but I'm sure that there's piped in background vocals, and I've heard there might even be piped in rhythm tracks on guitar. I couldn't tell. I listened to it a little bit to hear. I couldn't tell, but I can't rule it out. But I've heard that as well.
Yeah.
But to me, the band was definitely playing live. Vince was definitely singing live. Even going back, Kiss on the Hot in the Shade tour were piping in background vocals.
Yeah. This is not a new
they don't
thing.
like to talk
This
about it, but they were.
Yeah.
That doesn't bother me as much.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me when they start girls, 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 and you have a motorcycle sound in the front of it, and that's being piped in. I don't expect somebody to drive across the stage on a motorcycle.
Right. Yeah.
I left thinking I saw 2 live shows.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. So, and like I said, I would go again. I was actually a little disappointed I couldn't go the second night. Ticket prices, I didn't really need to. I don't know if you saw, I posted this morning, both Ace Frehley and Peter Criss were at the show last night.
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah. So there's pictures of Ace Frehley and Peter Criss together with John 5 at the show last night. So obviously I wasn't there, and obviously they didn't perform. And I'm like, that's pretty damn cool that the two of them were together again for a little bit, hanging out, watching Motley Crue, Def Leppard. I'm assuming, they're both, I know both of them have recorded with John 5. Ace on some of his solo stuff had John 5 on some of those Origins albums, I think. And Peter supposedly recorded an album with John 5, a whole rock album that hasn't come out. So it was kind of cool to see them both there together on the second night, with John's kind of supporting him. So that was kind of another cool thing. But I didn't see that, but I just saw it online.
Right. Well,
so
cool.
Yeah. I think that's everything, buddy.
All right. Sounds good.
So you going to go watch the Super Bowl in a few hours?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No. Nah.
I'm trying to think. No interest. Is there any? I'm trying to think of like bands that you don't want to go see live, that you'd rather see that band over going to watch a Super Bowl game at home. I know you've admitted you're not the biggest Alice Cooper fan. Would you rather go to an Alice Cooper concert or watch the Super Bowl?
Alice Cooper concert.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Now, what if the Jets were in the Super Bowl tonight?
That I'd have to watch.
Okay.
Because just for the hilarity of it's going to be a gag. Just getting there, and then there's going to be a gag reel that'll.
Well, I'll say this, and I'll close on thanking you again. I know you had a very busy weekend. I appreciate you offering to do this during the Super Bowl game. That was very kind of you.
In my defense, I didn't even remember that it was, I was
we've been texting back and forth for 2 days. When do you want to do it? Could you do Friday? Could you do Saturday night? No. Could you do Sunday morning? Could you do Monday? And then you respond, how about Sunday night? I'm like, during the Super Bowl? You're like, yeah, I guess so. I'm like, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. So do you even know who's in the Super Bowl?
Chiefs and Eagles.
All right, you did good there.
Yeah. I think. Can you be any cheaper? I'm looking at the text now.
Yeah. You're like, how about Sunday night? What did I say?
Yeah, I said Sunday evening would work better for me. And you wrote during the Super Bowl. I said actually yes, cheap bowl.
That was great.
Yeah.
That was great. But I appreciate you taking some time. Like I said, the
No
fans,
problem.
I was getting the private messages, the posts, the
Yes.
people in person.
That's really
the fans want you, Vincent. I actually,
I felt guilty.
Yeah, if you couldn't do it, I was actually going to do it by myself today,
Yeah.
which would have been a boring fest for the viewers and listeners. But the fans wanted you, Vincent. So I don't know,
I appreciate that.
Maybe I have to get a backup. Maybe Super M, if you're watching, Super M, maybe I'll kick this Vincent guy out and we'll bring in Super M for the future.
Super M might be the only exception to the rule.
There you go. No, but seriously, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Don't enjoy watching the Super Bowl tonight.
Yeah, I might just put it on for shits and giggles, for 3 seconds. I'll go like this.
Look, it's not the Patriots, so you can't.
That's true. That was a big part of why, or the Tom Brady factor,
That's right.
Being a Jet fan.
I have to think the halftime Rihanna, you got to be excited about that, right?
Well, now that you reminded me of that, what was I thinking?
Under my umbrella. That's the only song I know of us. My wife keeps telling me I know more that they've been on the radio, but that's the only one that ever comes to my mind, that Cheap Umbrella song that I couldn't stand when it was on the radio all the time. I think if she starts singing that, I'm going to take out my umbrella, crack him off my knee. But anyway, all right, buddy. This is it. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for watching. People who are watching and listening, let us know what you think. Tell me that I'm crazy about Vince, and Vin also seemed to agree with me. You could tell me I'm crazy. You could be respectful about it. You can say you don't think he could sing. If you make any comments about the way he looks, I'm deleting them. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to know it. It doesn't matter to me. But you could give an honest opinion on the performance. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Let us know what you think about John 5 and some of the performance he gave as well. And let us know what you think about the Def Leppard performance as well. That is it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bloody. Until next time, Double Ringo. There's crazy Ringos.
Pulp Fiction Ringo.
Pulp Fiction Ringo. All right, later, bud. Take it easy. All righty, there you have it. I'd like to thank my buddy Vincent for joining me in this episode and finding time during his crazy busy weekend. Thanks so much, Bloody. I really appreciate it. I really look forward to hearing and seeing all the comments that you guys have about what you thought about John 5's first show in Motley Crue. I'm sure you guys have seen the videos that I've shared online at this point. Like I said during the episode, I have no problem with you guys saying you don't like the way the band sounds, etc. Just keep it respectful, that's all I ask. Thanks so much for watching this episode as always, everybody. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. If you're listening to one of my podcasts, subscribe over there as well. Also, head on over to Facebook and follow my page, The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn, where each and every day we talk about all the rock and roll music that you love. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter as well. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you all next time.